Welcome guys, this is Ola from Stop Me Oh channel. Today we're doing something new in a way, not new in general, but sort of new on my channel. We are discussing a book. A word of explanation. A while back, me, Lucas and Isabella, my friends and my mods on the Discord, on my Discord server, if you want to join that, there's an invite link down below. We discussed this idea of starting a book club, so reading like a book that we all agree on, reading it together sort of. Initially we were supposed to read 5 chapters per week, but I think we all got into our own pace and I finished the book within like 2 weeks because I really got into it, same as Isabella and Lucas. So we didn't really read 5 chapters per week, it was more like five chapters daily. Anyway, it was a nice experience because as we were reading the book we were more or less close to one another in terms of where we were in the book, so we were discussing everything that we were reading. It so happened that the first book that we read was a book that I bought a while back, a couple of months back. I read that it's a very interesting one, so I bought it, I ordered it, but then I had other books and I only got to reading it right now. That book is Terror by Simmons. It's a novel from 2008. I'm sure you heard that there's a TV show as well. I think it's from 2018. It was released on AMC. Now, it's rather a long book. It's like 600 pages long, but it's like really small font, and I think it's more like 700 pages long. I heard opinions that some people found it dull and boring. I never really found it dull at all, not a single chapter. In fact, I got into it so much I was reading it constantly and everywhere. Now, bits of background information. Terror is a 2007 novel by Simmons. It is a fictionalized account of Captain Sir John Franklin's lost expedition of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror to the Arctic in 1845-1848 to locate the Northwest Passage. In the novel, while Franklin and his crew are plagued by starvation and illness and forced to contend with mutiny and cannibalism, they are stalked across the bleak Arctic landscape by a monster. Yeah, so to briefly sum up plot of the book, there are 2 ships. Both ships are stuck in ice, somewhere in the Arctic. There's a monster hunting them, basically. It's quite creepy and quite scary. They have to deal with more than just the monster. Most of all, they have to deal with themselves. That's just deep. I found that book interesting for more than one reason. First of all, I wouldn't really be able to classify it into a specific genre, like it was neither a drama nor a strictly historical book, not a horror. So it's like bits of this and that. I would say the language that it was written in was very interesting and quite rich. I feel like it was so well written, it was a pleasure to read it. Like I actually had a problem moving on to the next book because it just seemed like it was written in such a simple language compared to that. So I'd say the first half of the book is very claustrophobic and it freaks you out, and sometimes there's so much happening. I was scared a couple of times, like really scared, because that monster creeping out in the darkness, it gives you that odd feeling and you don't feel comfortable reading it. In fact, I'd say I didn't feel comfortable reading that book, which was a nice feeling because at least you were feeling something. It's also written in an interesting way because you have separate chapters for each character, so it's not just one narrator, there's plenty of them, and you're jumping in time. For example, you're reading about something that happens, a specific event, then you're reading about preparations to that event. So being fully aware what's going to happen, you're reading about what happened before that. I would say these are like flashbacks. So even though you are aware of what happened to the crew, well, technically you don't know, but you know that it wasn't a happy ending, you're still rooting for them while reading the book. You're still hoping for a happy ending, and the ending is not something I want to discuss in that video. In fact, I won't say a word. You can find out on your own. What I found really cool is the fact that it's based on facts. For a fictionalized historical novel, like surprisingly many things actually did happen. Most of the characters are real. You can Google that, you can find their photos even. A lot of what happened in the book did actually happen as well. When it comes to Terror and Erebus' journey, they actually did get stuck in ice. I don't want to say too much, but what we do know is that we don't really know what happened to the crew. There are bits of information here and there, some bits that Eskimo people passed on. There's a whole thing with Eskimo people in the book, but that's just closer to the end and I really don't want to spoil it, but it's there if you're interested in Eskimo people for whatever reason it's there. So after finishing that book, I actually did a research. There are some documentaries about what happened, what really happened. What Dan Simmons did was actually making parts of that up. He filled the holes. We didn't know certain things, so he made up what happened. Maybe it actually happened, who knows. Another thing that I very much enjoyed, and I always enjoyed it in books, was a strong psychological side of it all. I really like having complicated characters whose morality you can question, and that was a very strong part of Terror. I would say the characters, the narrators, weren't that likable. They were interesting, they had the dark sides, like even when there was a character that you could particularly like, there was always something that you dislike, which I feel like is a case with many people in real life. We're not all black and white, mostly we're somewhere in between. So yeah, while it was about what's happening to the ships, it was just as much about what's going on to the people. And the psychological side of it all was very strong, which was, I think, my favorite thing about that book. It's not really a spoiler. There's a guy that I would consider the main guy in the book. His name is Crozier. The very first chapter in the book is Crozier's. There's a couple others intriguing characters, some things that you wouldn't expect. It was very engaging. I'd say it was definitely one of the best books that I read this whole year. Now, there are some things that I didn't like as much, mostly in the second part of the book or closer to the end, but I wouldn't say there are big faults. Discussing them would be a big spoiler, so yeah, you just won't know. You have to find out on your own. That's a great review, right? Revealing only the good sides of the book, not talking about the bad sides because they're spoilers. So like I said, I don't want to spoil too much, but what I do want to say, it's a very interesting novel. I'd rate it 8 out of 10 or even 9 out of 10. It does change its pace second half of the book or closer to the end, but saying anything about that would be considered a spoiler, and I don't want to ruin it for you. For me, it was a blind read, so I haven't watched the show before reading the book. I intend to watch the show like one of these days. But yeah, what I want to say is that if you enjoy books that keep you on your toes, make you feel uncomfortable, and that are actually well written when it comes to language, I'd highly recommend Terror. It's such a great book, and like I mentioned before, the psychological side of the characters is very interesting. If you want to join the book club, Stop.io's Discord book club, join the server, Discord server, and there's a channel there called Book Club. We will actually be reading Little Women next. There's a movie coming out in December, so I'd like to read the book before it comes out, as I always do, like I did with Terror. And that's pretty much it. Let me know if you want me to discuss books from time to time. I will definitely stick to discussing books that we're reading in the book club. I feel like it's a nice thing to do. I'm reading a lot of books, so I can always discuss them. Thank you so much for watching and stay safe. This was all from Stop.io channel. Bye!